All right, so moving on, just to give another example of how, so I had mentioned before that one of the more common use cases for if statements is to change the value of a variable based on the condition. So to see this in practice, we did this before with an if and else statement, right? So now what we can do is we can do the same thing, but with Elif, just to show you guys an example. So let's say, example, you tip at a restaurant based on your bill. If the bill is greater than 100, you tip 10%. If the bill is between 50 and 100, you tip 5%. Otherwise, you tip 2.5%. So now looking at this, you notice right away, so like I said in the beginning, look at what variables you're going to need. You know that you have a tip, you have a bill, and then at the end I'm going to say calculate and print the final price. So you have the final price. So how are you going to make this work? So first things first, you ask bill equals to int input. What is your bill? Okay. Then you'd see now, if you look at this, you have what? You have three conditions. Three conditions, meaning that you will need an Elif. So first condition, so again, like I said, you go with the highest condition. So highest condition is greater than 100. Okay, because the next one is 50 and 100, then you have, so you check if 100, sorry, let me erase this real quick. If the bill is greater than 100, then what is the tip going to be? Tip is going to equal what? Is going to equal to the bill times 0.1. Now the second condition is if it's between 50 and 100. As we mentioned, with Elif, you have to put a specific condition. In this case, it's what? In between 50 and 100. So Elif bill is greater than 50. And it's less than or equal. Sorry, we'll put equal here. And then, less than 100. The tip is equal to what? 0.5. So it's equal to, 5%, which is 0.05. Otherwise, whenever you see the word otherwise, you know that's an else right away. And that has no condition attached to it. The tip is what? Is equal to the bill times 2.5, which is 0.025. Now now we have the bill and we have the tip, and that tip will change based on what the bill is. So if the user puts in 110, it'll come here. It'll say, is 110 greater than 100? Yes, it is. So it'll calculate 110 times 0.1. The tip will be equal to 11. And then because this is true, all of this will be skipped and it will come to the next line. If the user puts in, let's say 55, it'll come here. It'll check, is 50 greater than or equal to 100? No. So it'll move on to the next one. Then it'll see, is 55 greater than 50 and less than 100? Yes. So then it will skip the else down here and it'll go to the next line. If the user puts in 25, let's say instead of 55, you put 25. It'll come here. It'll check, is 25 greater than or equal to 100? Sorry, for some reason my iPad's starting to tweak out. Is 25 greater than or equal to 100? No, it's not. So it's going to move on to the next one. Is 25 greater than 50, less than 100? No, it is not. So then it'll move to the else, and the else is automatically has no condition, so it is executed no matter what. and then it'll do bill times 0.025. So then now that you have all this, make sure again, if you're going, this has to be down here. And notice how the indent for final price is not indented. If you do the vertical line, this is indented, so this is part of this block. If you do the vertical line, this is part of this block. If you do the vertical line, this is all one block. But because this is not indented, this is part of no block. If I make the mistake and I indent this and I put final price here, final price equals to ... then what will happen is the final price will become part of this block. Will become part of this block. Okay? Which would mean that, which would be disastrous for the following reason. Let's say, for example, let me just erase this to explain. So let's say, for example, tip equals to bill times 0.025. Why would this be? So now this would all be one big block. So if this becomes the case, then what will happen if the user puts in 150? It'll come here, it'll say, is 150 greater than or equal to 100? Yes, so it'll calculate the tip. Then it'll move all the way to the bottom here because it'll skip all these blocks. Well, what happened? Where's the final price being calculated? It's not here. Why? Because it is part of the else block right here, and thus you will have effectively skipped it. So for any bill that is greater than or equal to 100 or between 50 and 100, no final price will be calculated because you accidentally included the final price in the block for else. Where in reality, you don't want this. You want to remove this, and you want to put the calculation of the final price outside of every block. So now you say final price equals to bill plus the tip. And then you say print final price. So that way now, when the user puts in 150, and this is true, it calculates a tip, then it'll skip all the other blocks. And then it'll come all the way down here, calculate the final price. If the user puts in, let's say, 75, then it'll come here. Is this true? No, it's not. It is not greater than or equal to 100, so we'll move to the next Elif. Is 75 between 50 and 100? Yes, so it'll calculate this, 70 times 0.05. I can't think of the math off the top of my head. Then it will skip this else, and it'll move down here to calculate the final price. So that way, because this is outside of the block, outside of every single block, it will be calculated, it will be executed regardless of what block is entered into this if, elif, else thing right here. So this, in a nutshell, covers what we want to do with regards to elifs, inshallah. And then now we're going to be covering while loops. While loops very much are built upon the idea of if statements in the sense that they make use of conditions. And then after that, we'll move on to for loops. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.